guys, you're gonna see me working with Mr. Paco on muzzle conditioning. So he is very food motivated, so that helps a lot. But if you're doing this with your own personal dog, what I would do is use their daily meals. So you wanna get them a little bit hungry because you wanna be able to give them something like high food reward. What works for Paco is just his daily food, so that works out great for me. So this is just one way of muzzle conditioning your dog. Sit. Good boy. Oh, buddy, come here, sit. I don't want you to strain yourself. There we go. So this is just one way. No, I have him on a tie back, and that's just for safety purposes in the event that he decides he wants to run off or something in my house. But with your own personal dog, what I would do is just work on getting them to sit in front of you. And the only brand that I currently use, there's a couple other for like really short-faced dogs that I have recommended to people, but this is a Baskerville muzzle. It is awesome because it allows your dog to eat and drink. I'm gonna take this tie back off of him. It allows your dog to eat and drink out of it, pant, so that they're not completely restricted. Obviously it takes away the chances for them to be able to bite. But it gives them still an opportunity to use their other senses of like their nose and panting and things like that. So what I'm going to be doing with him is some dogs you can use with clicker. I'm just going to be marking it with good. And I'm going to start showing you as if he has never used a muzzle before. So how I would start is I would find something that the dog is very motivated in food-wise, and get the dog hungry. You don't want it to be where they just ate their meals and then you're trying to muzzle condition them because they're just gonna be like, well, the food doesn't mean enough to me. So what I would do to start is I would put a little bit of the dog's kibble or food or whatever it is that makes them eager to have this. And all I'm going to do is I'm not even gonna start really labeling it as anything. I'm just gonna have him eat the food out of it. Good. And labeling it with good. I would do this for an extended period of time. So I would do this probably for a good, 15 minutes of just getting him comfortable with it, of putting his face into the muzzle. Good. There's no like strapping it on or anything at this point. And I would do this for a couple days, and this would be the first step, is just getting your dog to eat out of it. Because you'll get some dogs that like don't even want to put their nose in it. He's extremely food motivated, so he's like, give me the food, I don't care where I need to put my face. Then what I would do for the next step is, after the dog has gotten extremely comfortable with that, I would start putting the food in, muzzle, and start labeling it muzzle. Some people say muzzle up, I just use the word muzzle. Or some people say in, but muzzle works good. Muzzle, good. So him like reaching for it, he's not in command right now, so I'm perfectly fine with that. I just have him on the place bed because it's a nice designated area to have him on. Now what I would do is, after the dog gets really, really comfortable putting their nose into the muzzle with the food in it, I would start saying muzzle, good, and then food rewarding outside of it. So muzzle, and I want him to keep his nose in there until muzzle. Oh, wait a minute, good, and give me a little bit more extended period of time with it in there. So let me try to see if you guys can see this better. Muzzle, good. Muzzle, good. So he's extremely eager for the food. So for him, I'd have to do a lot of practice of stuff like this, but then a lot of practice with him wearing it in certain situations. So he might just sit with it on. He's going to walk with it on. All sorts of things, fun activities that he really enjoys. Food rewarding through it once it's on to him. Muzzle, good. So do this, again, for another extended period of time with your dog. Get them comfortable of muzzle, good, and then you food reward. Again, this is just one way of doing it. There's so many ways you can get a dog comfortable with it. This is just what I found has really worked with my personal dog and with client dogs. Muzzle, good, good. So then once the dog gets comfortable with it being on their snout, so I don't want him like reversing as I'm trying to put it on him. Good, good. So then I slowly start moving while it's on him. He's being fine right now. Obviously no dog is like extremely comfortable with it putting on, so no. So if he was a bite risk to me, I'd be much more careful. So say that the dog is a bite risk. You'd want to make sure that this is extremely secure, and then you go to tighten it, and you want them tight. So I will tell you that Paco got dropped off in a size 3. This is a size 4. This is one of my muzzles. And he ripped the size 3 off as I was working with him. And again, I had no relationship with him at that point. So that's a little bit like, okay, he's already highly aroused and he's ripping the muzzle off and he got it off. So it was hanging down by his face. So it's super important that you make sure that this is nice and secure. You have this top latch so that if your dog does go to rip it off, they can't get it off. It needs to be like, so many people are like, is it too tight? Probably not. It is probably too loose. So for this size 4, I actually have him on the tightest notch around the neck. And then this strap up here, it's not able to go off of his face. Then what I would do as he has it on is I would start feeding him through it. So let me see if I can get this. So I do this and he can eat right through the muzzle. He's extremely eager about food. Good. Good. So I do more. Good. So what I would do after I get the dog comfortable with having it on is I would start to obviously feed through it, but then I would have him sit for a little bit. And as he doesn't try to rip it off or anything like that, I would tell him, good, and I would start food rewarding for that. Most often people jump too soon to getting the dog with it on, where they don't do enough of like conditioning them with them just putting it in their mouth or putting their mouth in it, because the second you go to strap the muzzle on, it shouldn't be that the dog wants to rip it off immediately. It should be that it's already felt it enough on its face that it doesn't feel completely foreign. Obviously, it's gonna feel a little odd because it's not a typical thing that your dog's feeling on their face all of the time. So really, really take baby steps to getting to the point where you're having them hang out with it on. But then when they do have it on, because some dogs, you have to get a muzzle on them, but when you're conditioning your own dog, you should be able to take steps to getting to a point of being able to have it comfortably on before they go to training, or if you're just conditioning them because you want to be able to have it on at the vet or on walks, whatever it may be. Don't try to rush the process, because we don't want to create something where it's like this always stays like such a foreign feeling to the dog. You can get a dog to the point where it's just like their collar, where it's like, okay, this is just part of like my garb that I wear when I go out on adventures or on walks, whatever it may be. But they're not going to be comfortable in it if it's like, okay, well, we spend 5 minutes a day with it on, and then you expect them to be comfortable with it on for an hour and a half vet appointment or 2 weeks of training, and they're trying to rip it off. So I'd say that Paco is like 75% comfortable with it. When he gets frustrated and he's like done with the situation, he wants to try to rip it off. And I think that there typically will be instances with your dog that they do get frustrated and want to try to take it off. I'd be at the point with him where now that he's e-collar trained, I would correct him for trying to take it off. Sometimes I would let a dog kind of just fight it for them to kind of get that out of their system, especially in the beginning, just to see like, okay, this isn't coming off. Now what do I do moving forward? And that's when I would do, tons of food reward in it, more positive experiences with it, on doing fun stuff, all that type of stuff. But with him, if we're on a walk now, he will be perfectly fine until he sees something that maybe makes him want to react. And then I'm holding him more accountable for his nice tight heel and things like that, and he gets frustrated, and that's when he wants to take it off. So I correct for that behavior, and what I do is just an e-collar tap at a number that means something to him. For some people, if your dog's not e-collar trained, that might be a prong collar pop or something like that. But you have to find something, good boy, that interrupts that mindset of being frantic, trying to rip it off. Once your dog clearly understands that I'm going to be wearing this, I've been conditioned to it, I've done a ton of work with it, now it's your dog's turn to kind of embrace it. So I feel like I was kind of all over the place, but it really is not a super technical situation. All you want to do is, and I'll take it off of him. So what I would do, say this is a dog that I was not comfortable with, I would step on the leash, I would unhook this part first, and then I would unhook and keep it tight. So you don't want it to be where it's like immediately loose. When they feel it loose on their face, because like right now it's still as tight as it was when it was latched, then they want to try to rip it off. So I'd go to the muzzle, off, good, and I'm on the leash. So again, if I was extremely nervous about this dog, I'd have him on a tie back. I was standing on the leash, but I would be much more like aware of where my body was and stuff like that. But he's been real good with me. So that is something that's important, is understanding that 9 times out of 10, if you're doing this with your own dog, that probably isn't going to be an issue, but I do see some people where their own dog thinks it's okay to bite them. So start slow, start steady with it. Again, Baskerville muzzle, I usually tend to flip the straps around. Like now he sees the muzzle and he's not like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of it. He's like, cool, I get food out of this. So again, the first step, sit, good boy. The first step would be food and muzzle. Good, the dog gets to eat the food out of it. Second step, after you practice that a lot, would be sit, listen to it down. So I have the food and I have the muzzle. Muzzle, good. Then I food reward outside the muzzle, good. So the basics of it is get your dog eating out of it, and then label that good when they're doing so. Then start labeling it muzzle as they're putting their nose into it to eat the food, so that we're starting to labeling it with a command word. And then the next step is going to be having them muzzle where they put their nose in it, good, and then you food reward outside of it. And then once you do that a lot, like when I mean a lot, I mean a lot, not just 15 minutes, you know, do it for 15 minutes for a week. Every single day you're doing, you know, 15 to 30 minutes of just muzzle conditioning, of just having your dog put their nose in the muzzle. And then get used to putting it on, having them wear it for 5 minutes at a time. And if you notice that just laying there with it on makes them like really either like stiff or wanting to rip it off, try to get them moving. You can just walk around the house with them, you know, have them on a leash, all of that, and just keep them moving. And then each day, try to up the amount of time they spend with it on. And again, you can food reward right through it. So when they're not trying to rip it off or they're not being, you know, crazy with it on, go ahead and food reward and mark that good behavior. And then slowly but surely, it'll just start becoming something that's a little bit more normal for them to have on their face. So start taking them for walks, hikes. They can still do off-leash work with it if your dog's off-leash reliable, all of those kinds of things. So this is super important, especially if you're like ever slightly concerned of your dog in any certain situation. Like I know a lot of dogs don't like their nails done. They don't have, you know, they've never had any aggression tendencies towards any dog or any person, but you get some dogs that literally are just like, no, I will act that way when I'm getting my nails done. Muzzle conditioning is a great option for that. Vet visits, walks where, you know, you're concerned about reactivity. It just is never a bad idea to muzzle condition your dog because you never know when you'll need it. So it's a nice situation where if we can get them comfortable with it, that in the event you do need to use it or you choose to use it for some reason, they're not just trying to rip it off the whole time. So I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, definitely let me know.